sé que un día volverá.
I can still remember the sound of the security gate clanging shut the first time I walked into a youth prison. I had just been asked to step in as director of juvenile corrections, and I thought I should tour the state's facility. I have never forgotten what I saw that day. In fact, what I saw and heard that day in many ways leads me to talk to you about what some might consider a radical idea. I believe it is time to close every youth prison in America permanently, every single one of them, and replace them with things that work. Now, I want to tell you how I came to this belief, but I want to explain that I want to call these institutions exactly what they are. These are prisons for kids. They're often called youth development centers or youth rehabilitative centers or training schools or reformatories. Well, let's call them what they are. These are prisons for kids. Let me tell you a little bit about what I saw that day as I walked through the facility. I saw bright lights everywhere that I went. I saw 100 young people in a facility that had been built for 40. I saw young people wearing sweats with holes in them. I saw young people in handcuffs and shackles. I saw rows of isolation cells, and in each of those cells, I saw a young face staring out because that young person had been held in solitary confinement, sometimes for weeks. The walls of this place virtually dripped with a pervasive sense of dread and anxiety and tension and anger. And everywhere I walked in this facility, there was a sense of imminent violence. Well, I had a terrible night that night. I found myself thinking again and again, what would happen if one of my own children were being held in that place? And I thought, we've got to fix this place. We've got to make it better. And I ask everyone listening today, please go to your state leaders and say, we want to close these facilities down. I can still remember the last time I walked out of that youth prison that I tried so hard to change. I can still remember the sound of the young voices of the men fading as I walked through the facility with security door after security door closing behind me. I can actually still remember the sound of that gate closing as I walked out of that facility. I remember the tremendous sense of relief I felt that this place was no longer my problem, no longer my responsibility. And I can still remember the awful guilt that I felt because I had left behind 100 young men in that terrible place. But I've never forgotten them. We can never forget about them. So I ask you to imagine with me the day when we close the last youth prison in America. I ask you to imagine with me the day when we hear the security gate of the last youth prison in America clanging shut. I ask you to imagine that that is the day when we take a huge step forward to fully embrace all of our children, all of their potential, all of their value, and that we say we are no longer going to leave the world. We're going to leave the shame of leading the world and locking our kids up behind, but instead we're going to invest in our children, every single one of them, even and perhaps especially those who are most troubled. We can do this. Thank you.
You know, San Antonio, it's, for me, it's a rejoice, you know, but there are a lot of children in Texas, and I wanted to take a moment of silence and, you know, my son and, you know, Mary Jane Martinez, who's been on this mission, are now having the world, you know, even the Pope coming. But if we could just, for one moment, those indigent children in Texas, okay? I'm going to invite everybody to come to the Paul Elizondo building. I want to hold a vigil next Wednesday, and I want to invite everybody there to join us to have a prayer vigil for the indigent children of Texas. You know, it was mentioned in Senator Whitmire's bill legislation. You know, this secession, he had did a bill 1630 off of a report closer to home here. It was done by the Council of State Governments. And I had gone to ask that our language be included. You know, I know you guys have been with me for a while here, and you know, as far as why I've been on this mission, I still think about that doctor laughing in my face and telling me I didn't have any rights when, you know, they brought my son on that Father's Day back in 2009. And, you know, he was rolling. They had put him on Prozac. And I grabbed him, and, you know, he started crying and saying that they told him he wouldn't get out unless he took this medication. And, you know, and she laughed in my face like that. You know, I prayed to God that day that, you know, to give me the strength to eradicate this injustice against indigent children is what was in the bill there. And what I had been working with and trying to bring partnerships with the young man that you had just seen there, Dr. McCarthy, who's actually in Arizona on a national conference with the heads of all the juveniles in the United States on why we're creating this violence. It was sort of as to why Senator Whitmire didn't add our language in this 84th session, and even what we did with Senator Menendez. We'd asked Senator Menendez to please take our language as to it showing what was causing what it said in the report, 54% recidivism rate. In 2010, Mr. Lubao had come from the Casey Foundation here to San Antonio and given a PowerPoint that he had given me to advocate for, and I did, and I had continue on because they didn't adopt. And you know, you just think about this, and these are children, you know. And when they didn't adopt, I did the assessment at the Advocates Youth Boxing Program here with Mr. Mata, Charlie Mata. There at on the west side, you know, we're getting a lot of the kids there, and even the Redland program. It seemed like that school to prison pipeline is how it's existing with this Redland. I don't know how or what happened with our society having to, you know, go through this being as a process of what they're saying is justice. You know, prior to my work with the Casey Foundation, I had the honor of working with Mary Jane Martinez's group, the Texas Families of Incarcerated Youth, after her son was molested and put on antidepressants at the Cindy Taylor Crier Center here in San Antonio. She had advocated with Senator Whitmire because, you know, this molestation was going on in the Texas Youth Commission, sort of a horrific rate, and they had taken it to the governor, and I think, you know, some of them, as far as the placements were, you know, closed down. And, you know, to her to have to live today and her son, you know, being incarcerated, now lives with today because of what happened to him with schizophrenia. And, you know, I just hug her and hold her and pray for her. And that's sort of why I want to have the vigil next Wednesday. And it's really, really important that, you know, we, as he had said, Dr. McCarthy had said, that we start informing these people that we are citizens and we're concerned with what your process is doing. You know, but then when I did it, the 7 single-parent moms, and myself and the 2 sets of parents, the recidivism rate wasn't 54%, and it was a lot higher. And you know, the one young man ended up killing his father, and I had gone to see Judge Lisa Jarrett. She had got the appointment with the government, and I didn't know she was involved in Mary Jane Martinez's case. I had just gone as an advocate and a father, you know, to inform her that, you know, he was sent home because of the liabilities of what they used on him, you know, these psychotropics. And then he ends up killing his father. I hope someone has some compassion here to realize what caused this, you know. And then, you know, working with Senator Van de Putte, we did get the bill as far as, you know, they had put my son in restraints and isolation, and told him, you know, he's not getting out until he takes this Prozac. And so we advocated, you know, through the advocacy's agency there with Mr. Mata, and to ask the senator to take this bill to legislation. She did. And on September 1st, 2013, Governor Rick Perry, God bless his soul, you know, signed that bill. And, you know, no children will ever be put in restraints and isolation in Texas again. You know, it's a law now. But what was really, really important, and sort of what we tried to get the Senator Whitmire, Senator Menendez, even reached back out to the work that Senator Holkhurst, Lois Holkhurst, had did when she was a state rep. She had did a bill. And this is where it was sort of confusing to me, because that bill was signed by the governor. It was HB 915. And 915 said that, in the language, and I referenced to it in one of my programs earlier in the year, that psychotropics are the cause of suicide in the Texas foster care system. They were putting children on psychotropics in the foster care system that was causing that. And I had gone, and, you know, they brought some of the kids to testify what these drugs were doing to their mind. But, you know, when I read this report closer to home, and it was all sort of the work that we had been saying when Mr. Lubau came with the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, and then the summary we worked on to get the contract with the Bexar County Juvenile Department at our boxing gym. It said pretty much the same thing as far as the 54%, what we were saying and have been saying, of even living. You know, it's my son, and, you know, Whitmire's bill said indigent children. And to even think that we're going to do this to indigent children, it's identified now. And that bill that Holkhurst did, why is it not being brought into what language should have been included in Whitmire's that he didn't, and he said that he wouldn't? And we reached out to the writers, the Council of State Governments, Tony, Nancy. We actually, as far as the people that worked on it here in Texas, went to Texas Appleseed. And they have a division that sort of did the review on this report. And that division, it's called the School to Prison Pipeline Division. I mean, we're funding or paying somebody, giving somebody a job to make sure that there's a school to prison pipeline. And, you know, we get those kids too at our boxing gym, those kids getting put on Redland. And when I did the assessment, what was shocking was the disparity. And, you know, 70% of them recidified. My son's one of those kids that ended up into the adult system. But to say that 80% of these kids are Mexican kids, what's the state of Texas doing? And so when we reached out to try to get some type of, because they're not going to add our language, you know, and not, and that's sort of, you know, they're talking about legislators, and I thought, you know, somebody's got to say something. You know, we tried to get Senator Menendez, you know, since the session, we've sent requests to meet with Senator. Maybe he'll show up at the vigil, because I'm going to send him an invitation. I'm going to send everybody an invitation. This is my invitation to you. You know, today we need to really, really get behind what Dr. McCarthy is saying. The children are the body or the legs of the body of America. And we're crippling ourselves with their process. And if we don't look at the future as far as what I have at Mr. Matas right now, and I went to the city because, you know, we're giving monies to people that aren't addressing the point of matter. And I don't know if they're getting contributions, because that's what we thought as to why Vandy Pugh didn't add the language that what Holkhurst did in the foster care system. We tried to tell her, you know, kids were jumping over the fence. I mean, I've got report after report. Friday, in Senator Whitmire's district, they had a riot in one of the juvenile facilities. And 3 kids were injured, but they were saying the kids were on the roof. And then Senator Whitmire saying, well, if something doesn't happen here, we need to close it down. He's going to wait for somebody to end up dead? Or, you know, what are you waiting to happen? You know, and that's why I'm here today. And what I had tried to say then, I had authored Court. And Court is knocking out recidivism in Texas. Sort of on what I say about my mission, continuing on the work on trying to find other alternatives, and why we pushed with Susan Reed. You know, at the time she was a district attorney, there was a program with the adult probation department Mr. Jarvis Anderson had. And it was called America's Perfect Storm, the 3 Powers of Change. And I started working with and doing the reviews after Vandy Pugh had that done in 13. We had a SP certification that we thought, you know, suicide prevention is because the kids were committing. It wasn't good. I mean, jumping over the fence at the Crier Center. I mean, there's article after article in the Express News, and just sort of when you put it all together as far as some of the reviews I was doing with the DVA. You know, I did the 2012 DVA suicide report, and I created Veterans for Education Reform because on the review of that report, and when I did the assessments, it showed that that rate of suicide was our veterans falling in, not being acknowledged, that the crisis that they're enduring as to the 50 and 59 being the highest rate. 80% of that 50 to 59 recidified into the judicial system without any resource. And now, of course, we have our Veterans Court with Judge Christensen, and there's alternatives now that should have been then, as far as why we had, or maybe even still have, that high rate of suicide today. And that's why having to work with our veterans and, you know, the guys, you know, in Rumsfeld, you know, as far as our peer-to-peer program, and talking to them, and, you know, they talk about, you know, snipers shooting at them, and, you know, of course, it's a shoot to kill. I don't think it's code red or code orange, but it's a shoot to kill order. And then when a sniper shoots at you and they're hiding behind citizens, you have to record that. You know, in the military, you have to go and record your kills. And usually you don't get the sniper, but you get the citizens that they're hiding behind. So, you know, you'll have to record some baby's head blown off, or a grandmother holding her granddaughter, and, you know, side of her neck ripped out. And, you know, so you have to explain to your brother veteran that, you know, God's going to forgive you, you know, just come home and, you know, be strong. And, you know, with the 49, I think it was 49 murder-suicides last year in 2014, you know, it's a mistake that's done here. And, you know, we were talking about PTSD at the American Legion last year. The conversation came up as to, you know, when a wife gets scared of the flashbacks and the sweating, you know, the gun under the pillow, just, you know, as far as the withdrawals or just the suffering of PTSD, or the withdrawals of the antidepressants or the psychotropics. You know, she sort of just can't, you know, live with the fear, because remember, these guys are trained killers. Man. I had to call them later, but they are trained killers, and, you know, they have to sort of try to find a way to govern themselves, and that's why it was so vital to trying to find a path of identity for them. And we reached out to, after the battles, Save a Hero, even the Center for Healthcare Services, you know, because they started wanting to get on the veteran issue and, you know, try to, it's like they're hoarders, you know, they want the money, but, you know, why aren't you acknowledging what's the cause of suicide? And last year at the conference that the Center for Healthcare Services, I went to Mr. Evans, I went directly to him, you know, I'm a veteran myself, so I don't need to be going around people. And I asked him, you know, why aren't you guys addressing the cause of suicide? I mean, I keep listening to you say that y'all don't know what the cause of suicide, and then I gave him the work that State Representative Lois Holker said. And we need to say this because last year when President Obama talked about, you know, the police brutality, at that time I was referencing to the identity of the psychotropics with our veterans. But if the Governor Perry signed the bill saying that that was the problem as far as the cause of suicide in the foster care system, why are you not putting that into what our veterans are enduring or what the children of Texas are enduring, or even the children of America, you know, as far as where's this war or how did this war start as far as destroying the fabric of our society? And what shows, and the assessment would be easy enough, and that's what we asked Whitmire's group, or anybody that would, what Dr. McCarthy's saying, look at where the violence is coming from. I mean, we sit here and watch it on our televisions, watch it in the newspaper as a process. And, you know, the damnedest thing is in San Antonio to see all these little Mexican kids and all this violence with all these children. And then there's no lifeline for them. You know, that, you know, I don't know why Mr. Evans or the Center for Healthcare Services is trying to say that they have a resolve here, because even when we try to work with, I think Mr. Gilbert got the appointment from Tommy Atkinson, the Commissioner's Court, when they started a diversion program in the magistrates, identifying again the crisis, but yet not wanting to say that this pharmaceutical or this psychotropics are what's causing it. And I'm not going to steer away from it. This is the enemy. And, you know, he wouldn't speak with us, and I hadn't gone back to his conference this year. And the damnedest thing, you know, he's riding on that veterans report that, you know, I had given to him, and, you know, they're giving monies away, and even for, I think there was another group that I had gone to, it was Clarity. I mean, it was Clarity, After the Battle, Boy with the Ball, 5-1, Center for Healthcare Services, and all of them are not wanting to say. Not one of them have ever said, even today. I don't think they'll say. I mean, and that's why I need your help to advocate to where we're not building a mental health center next to a jail, but San Antonio is. The state of Texas is building that center next to its jail. So that sort of identifies the processes that are being utilized in our society, and that's why I really worked really hard on this court program. And I want to go to, I'm hoping that someone from the Casey Foundation can join me. It's sort of a simple thing with the work I did with our veterans and know that they're suffering, they're out there in the rural areas. I thought, you know, we're indigenous people, and we have a technology that we've used on the reservations throughout the United States, and it's earthen. And we've built earthen homes, and are building earthen homes here in San Antonio. My dear, dear, dear blessed friend of mine, Mr. Jitter, manufactures the machines that make an earthen block. And now with the work I've done with, well, actually just being out here for world peace with Mr. Bill Zinkin, I was honored to be blessed to learn more about the solar technology, and I thought that partnership would work. You know, our earthen homes and the solar, and then, you know, now even I'd reached out to a poly company to where we can start taking the waters, and if we're going to take the earth and remove it to where we can put a container on, then on top of it build an earthen home, that is solar efficient, that would be where our veterans can help mentor those kids. Instead of sending them into a penal system, let's divert them into a work program, you know, like I did when I was in school. I mean, I went to work, you know, 14 years old. My first job was a migrant teacher's aide for a migrant program with Aurora Gonzalez. And so, but I'm working, you know, I'm becoming to where what Wentmeyer said in his bill, that the children are indigent. And that's where the combination sort of works. It opens that door. If he's saying because they're indigent as to why they're recidifying, well, if we have 54% in the reports, which isn't true because Bear, Harris, Tarrant, Dallas, and Travis aren't part of the report. So when I did it was 70% in Bear County, and it's probably the highest rate of recidivism in the state of Texas. But in their report is 54, and he says, well, let's keep them closer to home. I says, no, let's not send them to prison. Let's create a work program to where we're going to start building affordable housing through the HUD program with our veterans mentoring these young children, men and women, young men and women, on them working to help end that indigency. You know, 70% of them were single parent moms. And of course, you know how the system sets up. I think the first time you call the Attorney General here in Texas, it's child support. So there's a lot of judicial issues here, and you know, we've gotten blessed in San Antonio. I had a program last year on this recidivism issue and asked the district attorney, Susan Reed, who we tried to advocate for on the America's Perfect Storm with Mr. Anderson, to be a diversion to identify them 17 to 21-year-olds that were falling into the system at a horrific rate, be diverted into a help program because of their minds being altered. And she wouldn't do it, but this year and after that debate, Nico LaHood did win the district attorney's office, and he started the Miles program with Mr. Anderson. So, you know, all these things are happening today, and there's so much more going on. I'm hoping you guys will all be there at the vigil. It'll be there at the Elizondo building, and come say a prayer for the indigent children of Texas, and that, you know, God helps us create a new path, you know, and God bless everyone, you know. I mean, we have a future if we can put the legs back under this body in America. So I'll see you at the vigil. God bless you.
Yo sé que un día volverá. Triste pena, ya déjalo ya. Yo sé que un día volverá.